Hello, welcome to another IELTS writing video. Today we are looking at an academic Task 2 question that was seen in Australia this month in May of 2011. This question was taken from IELTS-blog.com, which I think is a great resource, and if you haven't visited that website yet, I highly recommend it. If you enjoy watching my videos, I have lots of other resources available from my website at IELTS.com, and I have another website, EnglishRyan.com, you may also be interested in visiting. Let's look at the question together. Task 2 question, recently seen in Australia. Perhaps you will see the same question on your upcoming IELTS examination. Environmental pollution is a serious issue, and it is important to take steps on an individual level to reduce it. But now, since it is becoming an international issue, it is time to take environmental protection to a higher level. To what extent do you agree or disagree? I will give you 20 seconds to read that question once again to yourself. Okay, so let's look at the question together. From the beginning, now this beginning here it's important, but it's not very critical to the question. Just gives us some background information. Environmental pollution is a serious issue, and it is important to take steps on an individual level to reduce it. Individual level would be perhaps every person maybe changing their lifestyle a little bit to help the environment. The more critical part of the question comes below. But now, since it is becoming an international issue here meaning problem, it is time to take environmental protection to a higher level. To what extent do you agree or disagree? So this part in here is just telling us that people around the world are doing things to help the environment, but it's not enough. We need to take environmental protection to a higher level. So we need to find ways to do what we're doing now better. And it's important that in our response we remember that the question is not saying that people around the world today are not doing anything. It's saying that people are doing things, but that this is not enough, that we need to do more. To what extent do you agree or disagree? I like these kinds of questions. They're very straightforward and easy to respond to in many ways. So we're going to choose either agree or disagree. We're not going to choose anything in the middle. So, to respond to this question, I think it would be easiest to agree with the idea that environmental protection needs to be, the strategies that we're employing when it comes to environmental protection need to be improved. They need to be more widely practiced, and they need to be more effective. Now, some examples. Let's think. So around the world, people are doing things to help the environment, and I think a good example might be something like renewable energy, which at the moment is somewhat isolated, I think, in a way. What I mean by that is it's still cheaper to get power from traditional unclean sources such as coal and gas. But these new renewable sources such as solar are still more expensive, which makes them difficult to kind of to change the way that the world works. Recently, I read an article that said that solar power is coming down in price per unit of energy that it can create. It's still not as cheap as petrol or coal, but it is getting closer. So perhaps we could use an example like this, that there should be a push on renewable energy like solar power to make it as cheap as other powers like petrol and coal, and that in doing so, this will create a sort of shift in the world. Because the economical benefits of using a cheaper energy source will cause people's thinking to change, of course, and that this will be the key to kind of getting rid of these old traditional unclean power sources and starting to get the world to focus on renewable energy. So let's use that as one of our examples. Now, I think an important second thing that we could give as an example to take environmental protection to a higher level could be maybe increased awareness of the problem. I'm pretty sure most people around the world understand that, that the environment is really at risk these days. But I think that we could perhaps make people even more aware that they can do things to help the problem. So there's certain things that they can do as individuals to really reduce this. Part of the problem, I think, maybe you would agree, is that a lot of people, they want to help, but they don't know what to do. So perhaps we can write an example, something that shows that increasing people's awareness would be a good way to take environmental protection to a higher level. Okay, so we're going to write an essay now, and this essay is going to present 2 supporting paragraphs. It's an argument essay. We're going to support the idea that environmental protection needs to be taken to a higher level, and we are going to show this by looking at how solar energy is coming down in price. The example I was telling you about before that I recently read in an article, and secondly, how the increased awareness of people, that we can accomplish through tools like the internet, will help to also create a global understanding of the problem and maybe cause people to take individual action. Okay, so let's get started. Now, of course, our first paragraph is going to be an introduction paragraph. I'm just going to start this on a new page to make it a little bit more clear. Okay, now I think, as we mentioned before, the question sort of talks about humanity and how we as a global family have started to make the step towards a sound environmental protection policy, but that we need to go a little bit further. So I think that what we can start with here is maybe just a little historical background on the problem. And maybe we can mention something about the 20th century and how the 21st century needs to be different. So, the 20th century, pretty much right up to the 1990s, was a lot of consumption without too much thought on the effect it was having on the environment, and then perhaps over the last 20, maybe 30 years, people have become more and more aware that we have to be careful about what we're doing. So let's make a comment about that here, and we could start with something perhaps like, now if we're looking at the 20th century, we could say during, I think it's safe to say much of the 20th century, Let's just be a little bit dramatic here. Little action was taken to encourage lifestyle changes that are environmentally sound. During much of the 20th century, little action was taken to encourage lifestyle changes that are environmentally sound. Okay, now we want to make a shift here, so perhaps, this is the 20th century. Now we are in the 21st century, and that things are kind of changing. So, however, we'll just say over the last 20 years, which I think most people would agree with, it's kind of a period when things have started to really get momentum, the renewable energy sector. Significant efforts have been made. Significant efforts have been made, let's say, to educate humanity about the threats modern lifestyles pose to the environment. Just read that sentence one more time. However, over the last 20 years, significant efforts have been made to educate humanity about the threats modern lifestyles pose to the environment. Pose, if that's a new word for you, is sort of like how can I say it? Poses to sort of face, or not attack, but sort of give to the environment. Okay, now our third sentence, we're going to go into our thesis. And so, as you know from the question asks us if we agree or disagree that environmental protection should be taken to a higher level. So our thesis could read something like, it is agreed that environmental protection efforts need to be, and let's try a phrase like brought to the fore. If that's a new phrase, brought to the fore just means need to be made more important, brought to the fore of global priorities. Brought to the fore of global priorities and taken to a more advanced level of activity. Okay, let's read the thesis one more time. What the heck's going on here? It is agreed that environmental protection efforts need to be brought to the fore of global priorities and taken to a more advanced level of activity. So, two parts to the sentence. The first is just mentioning that that environmental protection efforts need to be brought to the fore of global priorities, which means we need to make it among the most important problems that we deal with around the world. The second part of the sentence reads, taken to a more advanced level of activity. So not only do we need to make this an important issue for all of us around the world, we need to act more to counter what's happening with this problem. So we need to do more to change the course of what is happening at the moment. Okay, so now let's go to our outline sentence. Now, like we said, we're going to talk about renewable energy, and secondly, we're going to talk about making people more aware around the world. So let's try something like manners in which this can be done will be analyzed. Okay. Manners in which this can be done will be analyzed. Now, our sentence is not finished. We should probably mention the two areas that we're going to talk about. So let's use a phrase like namely, which kind of means specifically. Namely, through the global employment of renewable energy. And now we said we wanted to talk about you know, making people more aware. So, and through, let's just call it through global educational efforts. Okay, so we're going to talk about global employment of renewable energy and global educational efforts of the problem. Okay, let's go to our first supporting paragraph. Firstly, now, what we want to mention is that we have to make it clear that we're talking about taking the current situation and making it better. You know, it's not really starting things over again. That's not what we're talking about. The essay question tells us specifically, you know, do you agree that things should be improved or developed more? And we do. So we have to make that clear here. Let's say renewable energy needs to be developed further. Developed further, this tells our reader that we're not saying that it's not developed. We're just saying that it needs to develop more. Develop further to, and we'll just make it to really make a difference. Make a difference in mankind's fight against global pollution. Global pollution. Firstly, renewable energy needs to be developed further to really make a difference in mankind's fight against global pollution. Okay, we have an example, which is solar power. Take solar power for example. Now, we want to just mention how solar power is coming down in price, and it's going to soon rival that of unclean energies, and that if we push this a little bit harder, if we put more effort into it, then this change can happen quicker, which is better for the whole world. So, at the moment, solar power is still notably more expensive. Notably more expensive than, we'll just use petrol as an example, than petrol. Now, let's also mention that this is changing quickly. So, although the gap is closing quickly. Okay, so solar power is becoming cheaper. The gap, this is the gap in price between solar power and the price of petrol. So at the moment, you know, petrol it's cheaper to power your car via gas instead of via the sun, but that's changing. At the moment, solar power is still notably more expensive than petrol. Now, notably, I'm sure this is a word you've heard before, but here this sort of means it's quite a bit more expensive. It's not, you know, it's not just a little bit more expensive, but it's quite a bit more expensive. Although the gap is closing quickly. Okay, now what we have to do here is to show how if we push solar energy a little bit, you know, like our essay question said, it said, you know, should we do more to encourage the development of environmental protection policies? So here, if we just, you know, in our discussion sentence talk about pushing solar power a little bit more, this will do a lot to change the balance of the energy sector in the world. So let's try with a little extra push. Solar could be, sorry, we'll change that to could become a cheaper energy source, let's say, a cheaper energy source. And then we'll say thus inciting, which is like kind of to start something, to change, inciting pollution, let's call it pollution causing petroleum, demonize it a bit here, industries to shift their focus to the renewable energy sector. Okay, let's just read that sentence again. I might have made a mistake. With a little extra push, solar power could become a cheaper energy source, thus inciting pollution-causing petroleum industries to shift their focus, which means to sort of change the way that they do business, or the way that they look at their situation, to the renewable energy sector. And sector is sort of like it's a good way to call an industry in the world. You can describe it as a sector. So it's sort of like a part of a bigger picture. Okay, so we're saying that if we can help solar energy to come down in price, this will incite, which means to start to change, incite petroleum industries to perhaps move away from petroleum energy sources and into more renewable energy sources, which is better for the world as a whole. So it is for this reason, we just have to link this back to our thesis, that environmental protection should be taken to a higher level. Okay, it is for this reason. So because solar power will help the world more if it's cheaper, it is for this reason that environmental protection should be taken to a higher level. Okay, let's continue on now. We're talking about education in our second supporting paragraph, and making people more aware of the situation and what they can do to help. So let's start with something like, secondly, maybe a big part of the fight against pollution is educating people about the measures they can take to help. A big part of the fight against pollution is educating people about the measures they can take to help. For instance, now, let's see, so what could we talk about? Let's talk about the internet, always a good topic and a good example to use. If we talked about perhaps using advertising on the internet to help encourage people to change their lifestyles and make them more, perhaps, more caring of the world, that this would be a good thing for the environment, and this would come as a result of increasing our efforts around the world to promote environmentally sound policies. So, for example, I'm just thinking here, let's try maybe something like Facebook, which is one of the most frequented websites in the world. So if we were to somehow, put information regarding how to change your lifestyle on a website like Facebook, then this would perhaps help educate people about what they can do on a personal level to help the world, and to help the world out of the situation it's in at the moment. So let's use Facebook here. We could say something perhaps like advertising on highly frequented websites like Facebook could do a lot to raise awareness of the lifestyle people need to employ to best help the environment. Okay, now perhaps the word frequented is new. We're just saying that this is a website that is visited often and thus gives us the key to get our message out to many different people from around the world. For instance, advertising on highly frequented websites like Facebook could do a lot to raise awareness of the lifestyle people need to employ to best help the environment. Okay, now we need to link this idea to our topic sentence. So we have to kind of show, a little bit more about how this can help fight, trends that are currently causing pollution. So let's try something like, let's point out that at the moment, advertising on the internet about the environment and environmentally sound policies is kind of low. I mean, I'm not sure what your experience is, but I definitely don't see many advertisements when I surf the internet, promoting maybe cleaner living, and maybe we could just mention that that's something that should change. So let's try something like, because online efforts to promote environmentally aware, environmental awareness are low at the moment. Because online efforts to promote environmental awareness are low at the moment, it is felt increasing them could encourage people to be receptive to new lifestyle changes. Okay, let's try that sentence again. Because online efforts to promote environmental awareness are low at the moment, it is felt increasing them could encourage people to be receptive to new lifestyle changes. So, in keeping with our essay question, we're saying that at the moment, online advertising encouraging clean lifestyles is something that is kind of low. But if we were to increase this, it would help people to live lifestyles that are perhaps more at harmony with the environment. Okay, now we just have to link this back to our thesis, which is usually not very difficult. Let's write perhaps it is for this reason that environmental protection sorry, I'm going to change this a little bit. Is for this reason that beefing up I'm very sorry, I'm just going to change this one more time. The idea of beefing up the world's environmental protection efforts is supported. Okay, it is for this reason. Now, what reason? The reason that we brought up in the sentence before it, that the idea of beefing up the world's environmental protection efforts is supported. Beefing up is just a term that means to kind of to make bigger or to grow or to encourage beefing up the world's environmental protection efforts is supported. Okay, and I know some people are going to ask, why do we have efforts, and then following it we have is, but of course this is referring back to the idea. Okay, on to our concluding paragraph. So, the concluding paragraph is the easiest paragraph to write. We're not writing anything new. We are simply referring back to information that we have brought up prior in the essay, and then we are finishing with some sort of prediction or recommendation. So, I'm going to start mine with a classic. After analyzing how growth in renewable energy and awareness can help the current global environmental crisis, it is felt the argument for environmental policy improvements has been proven. Okay, so we have our summary sentence and we have a restatement of thesis. Our summary is, after analyzing how growth in renewable energy and awareness can help current global environmental crisis. So just a review of the 2 points we talked about. Then we have a restatement of thesis. It is felt the argument. Now, what argument am I talking about? I'm talking about the argument that we made in this essay at the beginning, which was that the measures that the world is taking towards the environmental problem need to be improved. So the argument for environmental policy improvements, that's our argument, has been proven. So we're just telling the person reading this that after you have read our 2 supporting points, you should believe us. You should also support the idea, support the argument that we have made. Okay, now our concluding sentence is going to be, in this case, perhaps a recommendation, maybe that we think people around the world should follow the advice that we have given here, which is to push renewable energy like solar to make it a more economically viable option, and secondly to help increase awareness around the world. So let's write something like, it is recommended these policies be put into action the world over. Okay, the world over, very good little phrase you might want to remember. It's just a kind of a fancy way of saying all over the world. It is recommended these policies be put into action the world over. Let's go back up to the top and read through our essay and essay question one more time. Okay, question. Environmental pollution is a serious issue and it is important to take steps on an individual level to reduce it. But now, since it is becoming an international issue, it is time to take environmental protection to a higher level. To what extent do you agree or disagree? Okay, our essay. During much of the 20th century, little action was taken to encourage lifestyle changes that are environmentally sound. However, over the last 20 years, significant efforts have been made to educate humanity about the threats modern lifestyles pose to the environment. It is agreed that environmental protection efforts need to be brought to the fore of global priorities and taken to a more advanced level of activity. Manners in which this can be done will be analyzed, namely through the global employment of renewable energy and through global educational efforts. Firstly, renewable energy needs to be developed further to really make a difference in mankind's fight against global pollution. Take solar power, for example. At the moment, solar power is still notably more expensive than petrol, although the gap is closing quickly. With a little extra push, solar power could become a cheaper energy source, thus inciting pollution-causing petroleum industries to shift their focus to the renewable energy sector. It is for this reason that environmental protection should be taken to a higher level. Secondly, a big part of the fight against pollution is educating people about the measures they can take to help. For instance, advertising on highly frequented websites like Facebook could do a lot to raise awareness of the lifestyle people need to employ to best help the environment. Because online efforts to promote environmental awareness are low at the moment, it is felt increasing them could encourage people to be receptive to new lifestyle changes. It is for this reason that the idea of beefing up the world's environmental protection efforts is supported. After analyzing how growth in renewable energy and awareness can help the current global environmental crisis, it is felt the argument for environmental policy improvements has been proven. It is recommended these policies be put into action the world over. Okay, that concludes our response to this Australian Task 2 IELTS question. Thank you for watching.